democracy does not end at the ballot box. It is sustained through continuous transparency, responsiveness, and accountability in governance. While elections provide citizens the power to choose their leaders, the true measure of democracy lies in how those leaders are held to account. How these leaders are held to account. Once in office in Nigeria, the seeming gap between electoral promises and governance outcomes continues to raise important questions about institutional oversight, citizen engagement, and the effectiveness of existing accountability mechanisms. Our focus tonight is on how accountability can be strengthened between election cycles through strong institutions, legislative checks, civic participation, and transparency in governance. As the country continues to shape its democratic journey, the question is, how do we ensure that power truly comes from the people even when elections are over? I am Ezenwa Wagu. Welcome to Electoral Reform Half Hour on NTA News24. This program is brought to you by the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa with support from MacArthur Foundation. Our guest tonight is Dr. Utive Ibuzo. He is the founding executive director of the African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development Center, LSD, a seasoned expert in democracy, governance, and institutional reforms. Recently, he led Center LSD in graduating emerging leaders at its 23rd Leadership School, emphasizing ethical leadership and anti-corruption measures in Nigeria. He also has served as commissioner at the Police Service Commission. He holds a PhD in public administration and has an extensive records in research and publications on governance, democracy, social justice. Dr. Utive, you're welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Sometimes I like to add that you're a pharmacist.
Yes, I'm a pharmacist. I'm a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria.
A lot of people don't know that because of the role that you have played in the civic space. Yeah. So from your experience, why is accountability strongest during elections but very weak after?
You know, during elections, there is heightened citizen engagement because citizens will have to go and register or collect their voters card. You know, they have to attend campaign rallies. There is news about elections, and then politicians are competing. They court citizens. You know, in fact, in some places, they go from door to door. So naturally, citizens are very active during elections. And also know that, I think it was one governor in the US who said that campaigns are done in poetry, but governance is in prose. So during campaign, there's heightened activity everywhere. So naturally, citizens get engaged. And then after elections, citizens disengage for many reasons. One, they are struggling for survival. You can't be going for election every day, you know. And two, the politicians do not want accountability. And there are no platforms or mechanisms for accountability. You know, take for instance, legislators are supposed to be having town hall meetings where they go back to their constituencies to give account of their stewardship. are the legislative arm of government. But you know, it has now been changed completely to a situation where you go back is to distribute keke napep or distribute motorcycles or empowerment. Nobody gives real account and no questions about the major responsibilities of the legislators, which include lawmaking, oversight, and representation of the people. So it's a huge challenge to our democracy, which we need to address.
I think sometimes, Dr. Utive, the focus is so much on the legislature. But in our country, for instance, ministers represent states. And so they also do not have...
Yes, but remember, we're talking about citizens and elections. The ministers are not elected.
But they work for people who are elected.
So it's those who the accountability is now to flow to the president. You know? Yeah, but yes, you are right. Ministers, in a normal, let's say, in an ideal situation, in every country, accountability is done through 5 mechanisms. I've always made this argument. Number 1 is internal mechanism by the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. And good ministries, departments, and agencies, they will put in mechanism that will make citizens to engage with them. And that will be a point of accountability. Number 2 is legislative oversight, where the legislators oversight all activity. There is no agency of government that does not have a committee that oversights it. And then the third is independent institutions. Independent institutions which are set up like the Police Service Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, the Public Complaints Commission, that has, you know, some accountability measures in several areas. Code of Conduct Bureau, and so on. Yeah. And then the fourth is the media, which is legally, constitutionally guaranteed to hold government officials to account. And then the last, but probably the most important, is citizens and civil society. And these citizens and civil society, they are supposed to have several instruments that they can use to hold leaders to account, like what I mentioned earlier, town hall meetings, even citizen scorecards, audit of people in authority. But why accountability is generally weak and low in our society is because these 5 mechanisms that I have described are not operating at optimal level.
I agree with you, absolutely. But let's look at the operations of, the political parties. Most of their activities remain very opaque. From candidate selection to even finances, discipline, can we truly expect accountability from those they produce?
We cannot. And it's unfortunate because actually the opacity of the operations of political parties start from registration. You know, there have been several attempts by political parties to have, e-registration, online registration, where, the number or the names and the contact of all members will be clear in one place. But this has not happened. And then, of course, after registration, clear registration, the first is financing. Members are supposed to give paid dues, monthly dues or annual dues and contributions to political party. But it's not happening. And then, these 2 major defects is used to manipulate candidate selection process. That now lead to imposition of candidates because, there's nobody knows the list. So even if you want to be a candidate and you submit your nomination and people sign it, and we tell you that that person is not a member of the party, then he's not a member of the party. So the opacity, and it's not supposed to be like that, because there's no modern democracy that can operate effectively without the absence of political parties. And political parties are supposed to be organization, that enforces discipline. That is why it is said that party is supreme. And we saw at least how party can be powerful in the Second Republic. When you have Adisa Akinloye and Uba Ahmed as chairman and secretary of the ruling party at that time. But during Obasanjo's regime, the powers of the party, the chairman particularly, was whittled down to more or less nothing. And today, the major party, if it's a ruling party, the party chairman cannot take a decision unless he knows that that decision is the same with what the president wants. So it's a huge challenge. And I think that one of the weakest points in our democracy today in Nigeria is the weakness of the political parties. I monitored the election in Ghana, and I was so amazed with the organization of the political parties. Everywhere you have solid party agents. And I think that is what many parties should look at going towards the 2027 elections. You have party agents that were solid, that will stay at the polling unit, and immediately after the election, they take the results back to their party secretariat. So for the two major parties in Ghana, within 1 hour, of the close of elections, they know the actual results. But that cannot happen. That cannot happen in Nigeria because of the organization of the political party. In fact, most political parties in Nigeria are not able to bring 100% of agents in the polling units across the country. So it's a huge challenge for political parties going forward in terms of strengthening democracy in Nigeria. That is one area that we need to focus upon.
We're going to go on break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at how all of this affects the voter and how he reacts after elections. So we'll go on a break now. Electoral Reform Half Hour continues shortly. Stay with us. Glad to have you back. We're still speaking with Dr. Otive Ibuzo. Before we went on the break, I was talking about, and the way you broke down how political parties and their opacity affects. But I've been thinking more about the voters and how really this can affect their understanding of accountability at the end of the day. What can we do to reimagine, encourage voters to think beyond elections and see how accountability matters? Really?
I think it's basically civic education and political education. Not just civic education about voting, but beyond that, political education. Civic education may talk about voting, rights and responsibility, but political education will enable citizens to know that democracy is a process and that even election is a cycle. That voting is the beginning. And that because, during the military regime, when we were struggling for return to civil rule, one of the points that we used to push is that when civil rule comes, citizens will participate. And when citizens participate, their needs will be prioritized. And when their needs are prioritized, there will be dividends of democracy. So, but with the transition process, the endless transition and the way it happened, where professional politicians now took the realm of affairs and they more or less, instead of expanding the civic space, constricted the civic space, hijacked power, and now what we see is elite capture of the state. In many circles in government, you hardly find critical debate about governance in terms of how you take power as a party and to realize that the essence of politics is service, and then put a place program and a machinery to translate the program into service for citizens. So you see debate by many people, political and bureaucratic elite, is what they will benefit and not what will go to citizens. So when there is political education of citizens in all of these, citizens will now realize that it is in their own interest to go beyond elections and to hold government to account. And to also know that, look, this is not a Nigerian thing. Everywhere in the world, when you don't hold elected officials to account, they will take, the easy part of, doing things that are beneficial to them. You recall that even in the U.S. during President Trump's first tenure, when during the COVID, people were saying that he was giving all the COVID contracts to his friends. Publicly, it was in the papers, until the system tried to come in
Hold him accountable.
to hold him accountable. So it's important to enlighten citizens. I think that is the key, because enlightened citizens will do a lot to the people. Let me just give you one example.
Yes.
In the period of 15 years, from around 2000 to 2015, China lifted 730 million people out of poverty. And India lifted 170 million people out of poverty. Between the two of them, 900 million. Otherwise, they were hosting larger number of people in poverty than Nigeria. Nigeria was third position. But because of this thing that happened within that period, Nigeria became the global capital of persons living in poverty. How did they do it? 3 things. Number one, enlightened leadership. Number 2, social protection policies. And number 3, active citizenry. So the point I'm making is that with active citizenry, you are not just going to hold government to account. While in the process of holding government to account, you will have better budget. You will have less corruptible transactions. You will have more relevant projects that
are
will
beneficial
meet
to the people.
And so everything about governance will improve.
Happily, Dr. Otive, you had a stint in the National Assembly, I think as Chief of Staff to the then Deputy Senate President. The National Assembly is debating electoral reforms now, and I think let it not just be that they are tweaking the laws, to affect election day procedures. Do we see how we can ensure this accountability that we are talking about mainstreamed into our laws in a way that it guides elected people throughout their tenure?
Yes, laws are good, but laws are insufficient to have credible, free, and fair elections. If you look at the Electoral Act 2022, if it was implemented as it is, the kind of challenges, the credibility issues that the election had, would not have had it. So, yes, I think that the reform is necessary to, especially, in my view, to deal with issues of collation and transmission of results, to deal with issues of INEC guidelines becoming law. Not just because it's becoming law. Because I don't understand that. I'm not a lawyer, but in those days when we were growing up, what we heard was that if an institution is set up by law and that institution makes regulations, those regulations are binding. In fact, it's amazing because there are many organizations in the country. NESRA make regulations on the environment. They are supposed to be binding like law. So there are parts of the law, but beyond the law, there is the need for change in political culture.
Absolutely.
And change of political culture, not just by citizens, but by politicians, by INEC officials, by the media, by security agents.
And citizens.
Doctor,
this is where we wrap up our conversation today.
30 minutes just now.
on electoral. And we wish to especially thank you, Dr. Otive Ibuzo, for your time and contributions on the program. It was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Always pleasure discussing with you.
Electoral Reform Half Hour is brought to you by the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. We are live every Saturday from 8:30 p.m. To 9 p.m. and on Sunday at 2 p.m. Same station. You can contact us on our social media handles showing on your screen. I am Ezenwa Wagu. Thanks for watching.